We'll be finishing off, inshallah. And we'll be starting Khalid Ibn Al Walid. But before we get started, as always, we're going to have some words from the Quran by Abderrehman. And then he's going to be giving us a blessing.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Typically the group that has the 400 that's going to win in the war, correct? Given the fact that they're very powerful. But in this instance, it was the opposite. In terms of not only are Muslims outnumbered, Muslims have less manpower, Muslims have less artillery, Muslims have less forces. So all odds and all statistics are pretty much pointing opposite to a Muslim victory. Alright? But what happened? When everyone gathered up for the sake of being against Muslims, right? الَّذِينَ قَالَ لَهُمُ النَّاسِ إِنَّ النَّاسَ قَدْ جَمَعُوا لَكُمْ فَاخْشَوْهُمْ. That the people gathered, and they gathered solely for the purpose of being against Muslims. What happened? They told the Muslims, إِنَّ النَّاسَ قَدْ جَمَعُوا لَكُمْ فَاخْشَوْهُم. People, they hate you, they're against you. They've come together, they've united for the fact that they're against you, right? إِنَّ النَّاسَ قَدْ جَمَعُوا لَكُمْ فَاخْشَوْهُم فَزَادَهُمْ إِيمَانًا. So instead of people, or instead of Muslims getting scared, instead of Muslims, being worried about what's happening, what they say, Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel. Right? وَقَالُوا Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel. So it's pretty much a similar theme to what we've been talking about the past few weeks. And where we left off with Salahuddin's, where we left off with Salahuddin's mention of his story, we talked about his great conquest of Jerusalem. We talked about what he did when everything was done. We talked about how he basically took over the land, was able to unite the Ummah, and then after he passed away, we made mention of how the empire kind of was short-lived and did not stay for that long. But just to end off on his last few days, Salahuddin died of a fever on March 4th, 1139. At Damascus, not long after King Richard's departure, in Salahuddin's position at the time of his death were 1 piece of gold and 40 pieces of silver, and he had given away his great wealth to the poor subjects, leaving nothing to pay for his funeral. Meaning he had not enough wealth to pay for his funeral arrangements. And towards the end of his life, of course, he stepped down from being a war leader to be a commander, and he spent his last few days basically making up for whatever he may have missed in his life in terms of war, in terms of fasting, in terms of salah, and he dedicated and devoted his last few days to being steadfast on the deen. Now, this does not mean that he was not steadfast on the deen in his life. If anything, it was quite the opposite. He was extremely steadfast on his deen. And we made mention of how his teachings, or the way he would conquer lands, or the way he would take over lands, he followed, or to the best of his abilities, he tried to stick with that which Islam says, right? He was very compassionate as well. When he took over Jerusalem, he allowed the people to leave that land unharmed, and he allowed them to do so by paying a ransom. And he stipulated that, I echo when I say that ransom, right, which was 5 dinar for, was 5, 3, and 10 if I'm not mistaken. 3 for kids, 5 for women, and 10 for men, right? And for those that were not able to pay that ransom, what happens to people, right? Other leaders would have cut off their heads, would have done this, that, and the third. But what does Salahuddin do? He let him rock, he let him go, no problem, right? And this was an example of his compassion. So, like I mentioned, if anything, he was strict on following and abiding by the deen in his life and in his following. And when it came to the end of his life, it was no different. He devoted his time to the ibadah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, reading the Quran, praying salah, catching up, whatever he had. And he gave away his wealth to those that were in need, to the point where he did not have enough for his own funeral. Of course, he was taken care of. This was the leader of the time, the leader of the empire. So it's not like he just, was just, left to rot in the corner. But for his own self, he did not have enough wealth to pay for his own funeral arrangements. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to, reward him and allow us whatever good that we can learn from this, to allow us to apply it to our lives. Now, the next individual that we wanted to speak about, and we're going to kind of not rush, but we're going to zoom through the next few, because there's another topic that we want to address before Ramadan starts, which is topics about Ramadan. But just for the sake of giving you guys some information, stories, we wanted to speak about Khalid Ibn Al Walid, right? And does anyone know the nickname that he has?
The sword of Allah.
Give it to me in Arabic. There you go. Saifullah. Saifullah, right? The sword of Allah. An individual who lost little to no battles, right? Who had a very, very good KO, whatever, it's the thing you guys play called KD, right? And he was remarkable, and he was known for his strategies. And his strategies were used against Muslims as well, because he was not Muslim to start off with, right? So Khalid Ibn Al Walid, known as Saifullah, was a companion of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And again, just to mention, somebody say, okay, he was not Muslim, how did he become a companion? Of course, he became Muslim, he spent time with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Was a prominent military commander in Islam. He played a key role in various battles. And not only did he play a key role in various battles with Muslims, he played a very, very substantial role against Muslims as well. Right? Same thing with Salahuddin. They were very strategic in how they would approach things. Right? This is what qualifies one to be a commander. Right? It's not just anyone can wake up, you submit your resume, and you become a commander. No, you're chosen, known for your strategies, known for your courage, and things of that nature. Khalid is highly regarded for his contributions to the spread of Islam, and he's often praised for his strategic skills and dedication to the faith. Same way, how we talked about Salahuddin. There was dedication to his faith, right? So it wasn't he got this recognition, he got this position, and he just left Islam in terms of following. No, it was quite the opposite, right? Their faith motivated them to be better in the way that they go about things. So before Khalid Ibn Al Walid embraced Islam, he was a fierce opponent of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, an early Muslim community. He initially opposed to the message of Islam and participated in battles against Muslims. One notable incident was his role in the Battle of Uhud, where he fought against the Muslims. Can anyone give me a brief detail about the Battle of Uhud?
The Muslims thought they had won because the Mushrikun were fleeing. And as they went to, collect the war loot, the army led by Khalid Ibn Al Walid kind of doubled back and flanked the Muslim army, and they ended up getting the victory.
Good, very good. That's a very good general summary of what happened, right? And this idea or this strategy was led by Khalid ibn Walid himself. And this battle is one of the most devastating battles in Islam, in Islamic history as well. However, before we talk about the Battle of Uhud, Khalid's perspective changed when he witnessed the strength and resilience of the Muslim community. Intrigued by the unity and conviction of the believers, he began to question his opposition to Islam, and eventually, after learning more about Islam and interacting with Muslims, Khalid ibn Walid himself accepted Islam. So the Battle of Uhud occurred a year after the Battle of Badr, and it was a significant event in Islamic history, right? Muslims are on an all-time high when it comes to their faith, when it comes to, for example, let's say like on a close street or something, we already won like a big battle, and now you think, we rule the world. So they're kind of in a position of symbols in this nature, right? They think they're untouchable. So the Battle of Uhud occurred a year after the Battle of Badr. And the Muslims, led by Prophet Muhammad, faced the Quraysh of Mecca once again. The Muslim army positioned themselves on the slopes of Mount Uhud near Medina, which I must mention that you're still able to go to Mount Uhud today, and the Archer's Hill is still present till this day. You're able to go up and climb on that Archer's Hill, which you'll see why there's a significance behind that specific hill. So Khalid ibn Walid, initially the battles favored the Muslims, like the brother mentioned, that Muslims were winning that war, and they were doing pretty solid. But a critical turn of events occurred, and that changed the outcome. So the archers stationed on the hill to guard the Muslims' rear left the position against the Prophet Muhammad's order. So basically, right, think about it like this: archers, when they're up on a hill, they have an overview of everything. Right? Any higher position, any higher ground, this is where your guys' Salahuddin knowledge comes in handy, right? So they're on a higher level, higher ground, they're able to see everything, right? Now in Islam, what happens is if you're in war, and someone, for example, leaves, like the brother mentioned, war loot, whatever it is, if they leave it, you are able to take it, right? It's not stealing, this is not any of this, is again towards a different circumstance, so you're able to take it. For example, you have javelins, whatever it was, spears, someone leaves it, you kill that individual. You're able to take that spear or whatever the artillery is, right? So this is war loot, and of course, you think you have the advantage, and you see all your fellow people that are in the army taking the war loot, right? But there was one stipulation. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Do not leave this hill until I order you to do so." Do not leave this hill until I order you to do so. It does not matter who says what happens. Do not leave this hill until I give you an explicit order saying you can do so. Right? Doesn't matter if you think we've won or everyone's celebrating, throwing confetti in the air, until I tell you don't leave. Now what happens? The archers, they see the fellow Muslims collecting the war loot. They see the Muslims they're doing really good. They see the Quraysh of Mecca retreating. Alright? They see everything's going in their favor. They see the war loot over there, and their greed takes over them. Their greed takes over them. And this is human nature, right? And this is why greed is extremely, extremely detrimental. So they want some of that war loot for themselves, and there's a little bit of a dispute between the archers themselves. Some say, look, we've won. There's no point for us to stay here any longer. Right? Like it's clear that when the Quraysh are retreating, we have everyone's collecting the world. We've won. No, go down, right? On the other hand, we had some archers saying what? What are they saying? Thank you, right? Some were saying that we did not get the order yet. So there was a little bit of a tussle between the archers. Some left and some stayed. Now, the whole job of the archers is to see anyone coming from afar and attacking them, keeping them at a distance. Right? Now that the archers have stepped down, Khalid Ibn Al Walid sees that there is an opening, sees that some of the archers have stepped down, leaving one of the best defenses, or leaving the best method of defense, or one of the best methods of defense that the Muslims had in that war, leaving it vulnerable. Because they stepped down, some of them, to go get that loot. Now that they're vulnerable, Khalid Ibn Walid, being the strategic individual that he was, attacks right away. They come around and they go from behind the hill and they attack the Muslims, and the tide of the war had now changed. Right? Because Muslims were the ones that were winning that war. They were doing really good. Now on the other end of the spectrum, this is now after Khalid Ibn Walid comes and attacks them, it's going in the favor of the Quraysh of Mecca. So he launched this surprise attack from the rear. The unexpected attack led to chaos among the Muslim ranks. The tide turned and the Muslims faced several losses. Prophet Muhammad himself was injured in the process. However, a group of companions, including Abu Bakr and Ali, protected the Prophet and prevented further calamity. However, there was war going on at that time. So not only, think of it like this, Muslims are at an all-time high when it comes to thinking that they're untouchable, right? That now has dropped. So that's one moral hit that they have. Secondly, they were winning, and now they're losing and they're being destroyed. That's another hit to their morale. Thirdly, who is leading that battle? Rasulullah. One of the biggest speeches, or the biggest speech about our religion is Rasulullah, right? This is the Prophet of Allah. This is the individual that was boosting the morale of those around him. News started spreading that he was killed in the battle as well. Although it was not true, it was simply a rumor, word started spreading a little bit. And the companions, after facing the end to their morale 2 times already, this is like the cherry on top for them. And Muslims were being severed. And it wasn't a regular war where they would do what they had to do and proceed on. No. They started mutilating bodies, they started cutting up bodies, they started doing things. And if I'm not mistaken, the Prophet's uncle, was also killed in this war. And the individual that killed him, Wahshi, right? Rasulullah was not able to look at Wahshi because of what he did to the body of his uncle, right? So complete humiliation, right? So it's bad enough that they were winning, they're losing, and now the bodies are being mutilated, right? Limbs being cut off, whatever it was, you name it, bodies being cut open. So it was like insult to injury, right? It was like an insult to the wound. And eventually the Muslims ended up losing. Despite the setback, the Muslims regrouped and the lessons learned contributed to the future strategies, and the battle highlighted the importance of discipline and adherence and to orders in the face of apparent victory. The Quran addresses the events of Uhud and Sudan in blood, proving the spiritual guidance and reflection on the consequences of disobedience. Right? And this is one thing that I'm going to tell you guys that I personally learned from this. When it comes, and of course you guys are younger than myself, right, not so far apart in age, it becomes a bit tough to listen to the old heads. Yes or no? Right? Sometimes you don't want to listen to them. Sometimes you feel as though, you know what, they're just coming after me for no reason because they're older and they think, you know, they know it all. They actually do know a lot more than you. They have a lot more experience than you as well. Right? So when something is told to you, doesn't mean every single time, but take it with a grain of salt and listen to it. Right? If you look at, for those of you, since I'm talking to you guys, modern day, if you look at an example, right? A lot of fighters, they don't listen to their coach, because I know you guys are going to go to jiu-jitsu afterwards, right? And you'll see the most successful fighters are the ones that listen to their coaches. Why? Because the coaches take a backside approach and they see everything, right? So it serves extremely important, and it serves a lot of value to listen to those that have experience and to listen to those that are in position to give you advice. Not everyone is coming for your neck, not everyone is trying to say something against you. Take that advice that they're giving you and learn from their mistakes and experiences, and you'll be able to catapult yourself into more success. So Khalid Ibn Walid, at this point, he is not Muslim, right? He just defeated the Muslims, so if anything, he's far away from it, right? And this is where his conversion point comes, right? His conversion to Islam is marked by a fascinating and drastic series of events. Before embracing Islam, like we mentioned, he was an opponent of Rasulullah and played a crucial, if not the most crucial role in the Battle of Uhud to have the downfall of the Muslims. Once version of the story suggests that Khalid's sister thought the man, her husband, had secretly embraced Islam. They sent a letter to Khalid inviting him to consider the message of Islam. Intrigued, Khalid Ibn Al Walid set out to Medina to investigate the matter further. On his way, Khalid entered Khalid Ibn Al Walid, encountered a group of Muslims who recited the verses from the Quran. Struck by the beauty and power of the words, he continued to Medina, where he met the Prophet Muhammad. And the Prophet engaged in a conversation with Khalid, presenting the teachings of Islam. Right? And like I mentioned numerous times, one of the biggest components was the fact that Rasulullah was extremely compassionate, right? And very soft. This is an individual who had just defeated his army and mutilated the bodies of his fellow companions, right? And he was the mastermind behind it. He still spoke to himself, he still spoke to him kindly. Let's be honest. If someone forget about hitting you or physically hurting you, if someone says something bad about you, you're going to spit in their face, right? Let alone sitting with them and talking with them. That's just how we are. It's the complete opposite of what Rasulullah taught us to do. So witnessing the kindness and humility of the Prophet Muhammad, along with the strength of the Muslims and the courage of the Muslims and the devout faith of Muslims, right? They were very steadfast in their deen, and that deen was the thing that made them not hold back or not stay back, right? This deen, this faith of theirs was pushing them to do more, to believe more, and they were very, very strong and steadfast. So seeing all of this, he was intrigued. And seeing the Muslim community, Khalid felt a change within himself. He realized the truth of Islam and the sincerity of the Prophet's mission in the remarkable turn of events. Khalid then embraced Islam himself and became one of the most devoted and skilled companions of the Prophet ﷺ. And he got the nickname of Saifullah, and this reflects his record as well, if you want to call it. So, one of the more controversial questions is whether or not he lost the war, right? He was a commander for a lot of wars, but there is a defeat that he faced in a battle, and the battle took place during the caliphate, or during the ruling of Abu Bakr. After the death of Rasulullah, the Muslim army led by Khalid faced a much larger force comprising the Byzantine Empire and one of the other armies. And the battle was notable for strategic significance and the bravery of the Muslims. However, the numbers were simply not in the favor of the Muslims, and the Muslims were not able to emerge victorious. So when it comes to the end of his life, similar to that of Salahuddin Al Ayyubi, right? And people mention the specific part that this man, and this is what Allah has written for everyone, right? Whatever Allah has written for you will be the way that things happen. Whatever Allah has written for you is what you get. And the end that Allah has written for you, despite whatever it is, nothing can stop it, and nothing can make it quicker, right? The way things are written for you is the way things are going to happen. Khalid Ibn Al Walid, a commander, right? An individual who led numerous wars. Led wars in which he was extremely successful. Led wars in which all odds were against him. Led wars in which, again, a lot of things happen in the world. I don't need to go into detail. His death was not on the battlefield, right? This is a commander we're talking about. Most commanders typically go out on the field, right? A time will come when they're too old. A time will come where they're not strategic enough. A time will come where they're not smart enough. A time will come where something comes back and bites them, right? And they pass away and they die in war. This is an example of many individuals. However, despite being a fierce commander, despite being someone that had so many wars, his death had nothing to do with any of this. It was rather quite the opposite. It was very anticlimactic, right? So Khalid Ibn Walid, his later years were marked by his retirement from active military service. After the death of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and during the ruling and the caliphate of Umar ibn Khattab, Khalid requested to be relieved from command. He requested to step down from his position, and he requested that he no longer have to do any military service. Umar ibn Khattab respected Khalid's wishes and replaced him with other commanders. Right? He's old, he's done a lot for the Ummah, he's done a lot. So he's letting him relax. Right? He respects his wishes. Khalid Ibn Al Walid spent the remainder of his life in Medina, focusing on religious pursuits and contributing to the community. He became known for his piety and humility. Despite his significant military accomplishments, Khalid Ibn Al Walid remained modest and refrained from seeking worldly recognition. Right? All these individuals were extremely humble. Right? They did not care for recognition. They did not care for compliments. If they received a great, amazing, whatever, they didn't really care for it. Right? They were focused on the goal, obeying Allah, obeying the commands of the Messenger, and they had one goal. They had sincerity in their actions. Right? We're talking about these individuals thousands of years after they've passed. Right? This is the reward that happens behind sincerity. And there's some people that may or may not have done more, but they were insincere and no one knows about them. Point being, do things for the sake of Allah, right? Khalid Ibn Walid passed away during the Caliphate of Umar. His death was met with grief, and Umar reported to have said, the woman will no longer give birth to the likes of Khalid Ibn Walid. Khalid's legacy endures as one of the most celebrated military leaders in Islamic history, and his contribution to the early Islamic states are remembered with admiration. The cause of his death was natural. Specifically, there is no record of what it was, but it was completely natural, right? It had nothing to do with war, had nothing to do with injury from war. His death was natural. And he passed away in Medina, right? This is what Allah has written for him, and this is what he received. So there's more history, there's more details, but this is the basic gist of it, right? One of the most fierce individuals known to man, one of the most fierce commanders known to man, an individual that was relentless, an individual that was feared not only by his opponents that were not Muslim, but by Muslims themselves as well. It's not easy to go up someone who has, a number and zip. He's never lost, right? Against the Muslim time, but later on war he lost, but I'm talking about that specific time. An individual who was one of the, if not the biggest causes or the biggest masterminds behind one of the biggest defeats of Muslim. This is the individual who then embraced Islam himself, right? And then all his strategic abilities and all his fierceness and all of these things that we talk about were then used for the sake of Allah. Same thing with Salahuddin Al Ayyubi, right? These individuals who were feared, who people were scared of, who people were literally shaken when they would think about them, when they would have to go against them. These individuals spent their last few years remembering Allah for the sake of Allah, spending time devoted to ibadah, right? And they passed away a calm death, and at the same time they passed away a death that was written for them, and a death that was, quite frankly, unexpected, right? And what Allah has written for them is what they received. So that sums up the story of Khalid Ibn Walid. And again, the few hours that we have to discuss this, for the small amount of time that we have to discuss these things, even for Salahuddin Al Ayyubi story, we talked about it, if I'm not mistaken, for 3 weeks, it does not do it justice at all. Honestly, we could talk about these stories from now till the end of the year, it probably still will not be enough, right? Just because of the vast details that are present there, just because of the emotions that are present, just because of all the details that are present in these stories that play a very big thing. It's not like these details are small and these details have nothing to do, that's why they're being lived over. No, if we talk about all of the details, we will be here for hours and hours and hours, right? So I encourage everyone, of course I mentioned some small things, but I encourage everyone to listen about these individuals, to read about these individuals, to do your own research about these individuals. Not only will you find lessons in it to learn from, but at the same time you'll be motivated as well, right? Not that kind of motivation, right? I want motivation in terms of being steadfast on the deen. So that's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to stay steadfast on the deen, to learn, and allow us to apply everything that we learn. And inshallah we'll open the floor up to any questions. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, I'll take them too. Anything? Comments you guys want to make about this? Anything you guys felt? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Yeah.
Do you recommend some books, please, about Salahuddin Al Ayyubi and Khalid Ibn Al Walid?
There are certain books, I don't have any off the top of my head, but there are certain references that I have. I'll give them to you afterwards, inshallah, right? One of my teachers, who some of you guys may know, Sheikh Badawi, he has a book that he was using, because they were doing the Salahuddin series in Brooklyn as well. So I get the title of that book for you, inshallah, and I'll give it to you. It's a very in-detailed book, right? I think it's honestly this thick, and it has all the details that you need. And same thing, inshallah, for Khalid Ibn Al Walid. I'll send it to you, inshallah. Questions, comments, concerns? Who's going to jiu-jitsu? Raise your hands. That's you guys, inshallah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Good? Perfect. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to apply everything that we learn, allow us to stay steadfast, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us more ability to learn, and grant us something for those. Jazakumullah khair.
Jazakallah for Abderrehman for the amazing talk. We obviously know neither Salahuddin or Khalid Ibn Al Walid or any of the Islamic heroes can be done in a short topic, but we try to do as much as we can. A few announcements. So we planned our revive on January 20th with Sheikh Shinawi. It was going to be about the development of the four madhahibs. Unfortunately, that will be postponed until further notice. So stay tuned in the chats. Also, we have recently changed our chats into a community, so you can easily see the announcements and the new events we have. If you're not in the chat, sisters, you can talk to me. Brothers, you can talk to Abderrehman. He will add you on there. Also, there is going to be the Mass Youth conference on January 27th. The tickets is $25. It's an amazing event. You guys don't want to miss it. It's going to be held at NYU. And it's going to be around like 6 hours long. And also the Rewards Reconnect 3rd annual Ramadan conference is going to be held here at the center on February 24th. It's also 6 hours, and we have many amazing speakers coming. And Jazakallah khair everyone for coming. See you guys next time.
Shukran. I think I'll drop it. You sure?